In the vast tapestry of history, few figures capture the imagination quite like Ragnar Lodbrok. His name resonates with both the clang of steel and the whispers of legend, a Viking warrior whose life straddles the thin line between myth and reality. For 40 seconds, picture this: the icy winds of Scandinavia whipping against longships cutting through the waves, shields glistening with frost, and warriors chanting oaths to Odin before plunging into battle. At the center of it all stands Ragnar, a man hailed as a farmer, a raider, a king, and even a dragon slayer. But was Ragnar truly a single man of flesh and blood, or a mythical amalgamation forged by sagas to embody the Viking spirit? This is the story we're unraveling today: the truths, the lies, and the legends surrounding Ragnar Lodbrok, the most famous Viking of all time. Ragnar Lodbrok's story begins not with hard evidence, but with sagas and chronicles that weave together threads of history and myth. The Ragnar's saga Lodbrok and Tale of Ragnar as Sons are among the most vivid sources, written centuries after Ragnar supposedly lived, somewhere in the ninth century. These Icelandic sagas portray him as a fearless warrior who won the love of Lagertha, Thora, and a slog each union producing sons destined to carve their names into history. Yet, historians remain cautious. The sagas were written around the 13th century, long after Ragnar's time, and often blend fact with fantastical embellishments. As the historian Else Rostal notes in her book, The Vikings, sagas tell us much about how the Vikings wanted to be remembered, but little about how things truly were. Ragnar's tale, then, is not a biography, it is a mirror reflecting Viking ideals, bravery, ambition, and the quest for everlasting fame. When we turn from the sagas to contemporary chronicles, Ragnar's shadow appears more clearly, though still shrouded in mystery. The Anglo-Saxon Chronicle and works like the Annals of St. Burton record Viking raids in the ninth century, led by fearsome figures such as Reginharus, who attacked Paris in 845. Many historians, including Hilda Ellis Davidson in The Viking Road to Byzantium, suggest that this Reginharus may have been none other than Ragnar himself, or at least the inspiration for his legend. The siege of Paris remains one of the most striking episodes tied to Ragnar. With his fleet of longships, he sailed up the Seine, spreading terror across Frankish lands. According to Frankish accounts, King Charles the Bald paid him a staggering 7,000 pounds of silver to withdraw a ransom that speaks volumes about Viking power. Yet, whether this was Ragnar himself or another Viking leader later woven into his saga remains contested. Part of what cements Ragnar's place in lore are the extraordinary stories attached to his name. One of the most famous is his marriage to Thora, who was said to be guarded by a serpent, or dragon, that only Ragnar could slay. Armed with a cloak of shaggy fur and trousers boiled in pitch, hence his nickname, Lodbrok, meaning hairy breeches, Ragnar slew the beast and claimed Thora as his bride. Clearly, the story echoes myth rather than fact, embodying archetypal heroism that Viking storytellers cherished. As the historian Jesse Bayek explains in the saga of the Volsungs, dragon slaying and monster fighting were narrative tropes deeply embedded in Norse tradition, symbolizing mankind's triumph over chaos. Whether Ragnar truly fought such a beast is doubtful, but the symbolism reinforced his larger-than-life persona. Even Ragnar's death is legendary, remembered in one of the most chilling verses of Viking lore. According to the sagas, after suffering a shipwreck, Ragnar was captured by King La of Northumbria. La, seeking revenge for past raids, ordered him thrown into a pit of venomous snakes. As the serpents coiled and struck, Ragnar is said to have uttered his immortal words: "How the little pigs would grunt if they knew how the old boar suffers." This defiant prophecy foretold the vengeance of his sons, and indeed, the sagas recount that Bjorn Ironside, Ivar the Boneless, Sigurd's snake in the eye, and Ub led the Great Heathen Army against England, avenging their father with fire and blood. While historians debate whether Ragnar truly died this way, the image of the snake pit became one of the most enduring symbols of Viking lore, embodying the fearless acceptance of fate. And here is where truth and legend intertwine most vividly. Ragnar may not have been a single historical figure, but rather a composite of several Viking leaders whose deeds were fused into one saga hero. Scholars like Catherine Hallman argue in Historical Dictionary of the Vikings that Ragnar's name became a vessel into which different stories were poured, creating a mythic archetype rather than a biography. His supposed sons, however, are undeniably historical men like Ivar the Boneless and Bjorn Ironside appear in multiple chronicles, their campaigns stretching from England to the Mediterranean. This suggests that while Ragnar's life may blur the line between reality and fiction, his legacy was embodied and expanded by real Viking conquerors who carried his name across Europe. Now, before we go further into the storm of Ragnar's world, let me pause for a second. If you're fascinated by the clash between legend and history, and if you want to explore more stories that uncover the raw truth behind the myths of our past, make sure you subscribe to the channel and join this journey. Each video takes you deeper into history's hidden corners, where the echoes of swords and sagas still resound. So, don't miss out, hit that subscribe button, and let's continue unraveling the mystery together. Returning to Ragnar's saga, one cannot ignore the cultural weight his legend carried for the Vikings themselves. The Norse people prized stories of larger-than-life heroes, and Ragnar epitomized the values of courage, cunning, and fate-bound defiance. In fact, his tale resembles older Germanic legends, particularly the Volsunga saga and tales of Sigurd the Dragon Slayer. These parallels suggest that Ragnar was less a historical figure than a narrative descendant of mythic archetypes, molded to fit Viking ideals of glory and doom. As Neil Price writes in Children of Ash and Elm, A History of the Vikings, the sagas were not written to be factual records, but to convey truths about identity, honor, and fate. In this light, Ragnar's snake pit death symbolizes the ultimate Viking ideal, meeting death without fear, with words that would echo across generations. The saga tradition also immortalized Ragnar through his relationships. His wives Lodgertha, Thora, and Aslog each represent different narrative motifs, from the shield maiden warrior to the serpent-guarded maiden to the prophetic queen. Lodgertha, in particular, became a symbol of female strength, embodying the possibility of women fighting alongside men in battle. Saxo Grammaticus, in his Gesta Danorum, describes Lodgertha as a warrior with a man's courage though a woman's body, highlighting her valor. Whether she truly existed or not, her connection to Ragnar amplified his saga, weaving themes of love, betrayal, and destiny into the tapestry of his life. Moreover, the exploits of Ragnar's sons solidified his legacy far beyond Scandinavia. The Great Heathen Army, led by Ivar and his brothers in 865, devastated Anglo-Saxon England. The chronicles describe their campaigns as relentless, shaking kingdoms to their core. The terror of Ragnar's prophecy, "the little pigs will grunt," was fulfilled in brutal reality. Bjorn Ironside ventured as far as the Mediterranean, raiding coasts and even threatening Rome. These deeds ensured that Ragnar's name lived on, whether he was a historical father or merely a symbolic one. In the words of historian Anders Winroth in The Age of the Vikings, the legend of Ragnar was not created to preserve the memory of a man, but to explain the origins of an age of conquest, and so Ragnar Lodbrok stands at the crossroads of myth and history. Was he one man or many? A king of Denmark or a poetic symbol of Viking might? His sagas enthrall us not because they are true in the modern historical sense, but because they reveal how the Vikings saw themselves and wished to be remembered. His dragon slaying, his tragic death in the snake pit, and the fury of his avenging sons were not mere stories, they were cultural pillars, shaping the Viking identity that still fascinates us today. In the end, Ragnar Lodbrok may forever remain a mystery, suspended between truth and legend. But perhaps that is fitting. The Vikings themselves believed that memory and reputation outlived the body, that the greatest death was to be forgotten. Ragnar, whether he truly lived or not, achieved immortality in the only way that mattered to his people through saga, song, and story. His voice still echoes across the centuries, daring us to face the question: where does history end and legend begin? And with that, our journey through Ragnar's world closes with an epic reminder. Legends are not born from truth alone, but from the human need to give meaning to courage, to struggle, and to fate. Ragnar Lodbrok may or may not have walked this earth, but in every dragon slain, every raid upon distant shores, and every fearless last breath in the face of death, his spirit endures. That, in the end, is Ragnar's greatest conquest.